Okay, we appreciate you for staying with us on the program. Still TMI, this very interesting and promising Thursday morning. Let's get the conversations on the road. First, we're looking at the sustained attacks on the offices of INEC across states in this country. Some persons say, well, it's a bit difficult to put together, given that you hear of attack in Kano, you hear of in Akwa Ibom, and then across the southeast, especially Ebonyi and Imo, for example. Of course, Enugu has joined that very sad list right now. But whatever that may mean, ultimately the concern is how it impacts not just INEC as an institution, but the overall, as it were, adverse implication it has for electoral process going forward in this country. While some persons, or most of us, are immediately concerned about 2023 election, there will be elections beyond 2023. For example, then in between, the song about whether to stay together or not to stay together is some sort of, if you like, a strand in this conversation. Very, very salient one, some people would argue. So I'm joined by two gentlemen this morning to help make sense of this very timely discussion. From my immediate left is Felix Osareme. He's a lecturer at the Department of International Studies and Diplomacy here at the University of Benin. Thank you for coming on the program.
Yeah, good morning. Yes,
appreciate it.
Good morning.
And next to him is Professor Julius Iyeseli. He's a biochemist, and of course, he's also, he's a chemist, and then he's also a public affairs commentator. Prof, as always, we appreciate you, for coming
having me.
to lend your voice to this.
Good morning, viewers.
Incidentally, I'm going to begin with you, Prof. We've talked about the unity of this country time and again on this program. We've talked about how that at this point in time, we only will be lying to ourselves if we say Nigeria is not challenged, whether politically, socially, or on any other front for that matter. But that challenge seems to be getting more complicated by the day. And now you hear about attacks all across the southeast, for example. Today is ESN, tomorrow is some certain political detractors who are behind it, who are sponsoring it, and so on and so forth. But the concern has become such that everybody is now saying, look, hold on a second. When it's all said and done, are we still going to have a country as we know it, given the level, given the kind of destruction, all right, the enormity of destruction that we're seeing right now? So much so that even yesterday, for instance, INEC chairman came and held a meeting with resident electoral commissioners. And one of the things they concluded was, look, we have a situation in our hands here. First off, INEC is being targeted, obviously, by certain individuals to ensure that we can't conduct election. In fact, at least implied in that statement, the chairman of INEC had already admitted that the ability or the capacity of INEC to conduct elections, as we did in 2015 and 2019, for example, has already been threatened. He also expressed concern about whether or not INEC can continue as originally planned with the ongoing continuous voter registration. But this is beyond politics. This is beyond election, whether for 2023 or beyond 2023, isn't it?
But this, what you have just stated, they are very obvious. It has come to a point where a blind man knows that there is sand in the soup and all that. What is going on is an effect of what has been stated in the past. If you look at the Southeast, for a very long time, these are people who have been crying that they have been marginalized. There have been serious violations of federal character in appointments and all that. And the president came up even after his election and said people from there didn't vote for him and all that. And then you have now matched your actions with that word, your word. And to a great extent, it appears that these people have been left out of governance in the country. And they have not come up because they have not come up to say, okay, since you don't want us, let us go. If you notice what is going on with those destructions and all that, it is clear to everybody what these people are saying. Simply, okay, we know that INEC is an organization that stands between the people, the contestants, and then, the leadership, and the people, the contestants, and then who eventually becomes leaders in this country. That is what INEC is supposed to be, to conduct elections into various offices and all that. And then if you now find that those offices of course, that houses where elections are supposed to be conducted, where materials are kept and all this, are by every day now going into annihilation, let me put it that way. It's clear to you that these same persons are saying you can't come here and then no more decide who leads us in this environment. It is, I'm sure that is one of these processes into the self-determination issue. That is it. Leave us alone. We can and all that. That is what they are saying. Otherwise, people are crying all over the country and asking, if you don't want this country to disintegrate, there are things you must do urgently. As important as governors of this country is, they've come up very clearly, succinctly stated that restructuring, you must. What I thought immediately, instead of the president of the National Assembly to now come out to begin to speak the way he has spoken, is to bring his people or present a bill. What do we do really?
But the senator has said that he doesn't speak the mind of all the senators or the Senate as an institution, for example. They're saying that's his opinion, and he has a right to it, because the senators will have to lend their voice to it on the floor of the Senate. But I'm going to allow you to catch your breath for a minute, Prof. Let me talk to Osarime. I mean, INEC chairman says, look, this is not just about physical infrastructure, like the building and furniture and furnishing, for example. It's very importantly about the materials, sensitive and non-sensitive materials, that INEC deploys for conduct of elections across this country. INEC is already a challenged organization. So much of pressure on the organization, especially around election season. And now we are adding to that with all of these ugly trend that we're seeing across the country, particularly in the southeast. And then you're wondering, by the time it's 2023, for example, what are we going to be looking at? An INEC that is, if you like, coming to a gunfight with a knife, or an INEC that would have been able, as it were, to recover all of these losses that we are still counting right now?
Well, let's take it from the name itself. Independent National Electoral Commission. INEC is not independent.
Because of this incident or before it?
Over time, we've seen that it is tied to the apron strings of the administration at that point in time. I can only say with sense of modesty that it was in 2015 when there was a shift in terms of power from the PDP to the APC that for once INEC was allowed to carry the day and to do their constitutionally assigned responsibility. When you keep hearing that the INEC chairman has been summoned to the villa, the INEC chairman has to go and meet the presidency, then you are not talking of an independent body.
Is there anything wrong with that? I mean, isn't it the president who appoints the INEC chairman, for example?
Well, the president appoints it because the man is capable. But the man does not automatically become an appendage. He's supposed to be given the free hand and the budget and the fund sourced from the public treasury, approved by the National Assembly, for him to carry out his duty, because the duty of INEC is critical. In any democratic system, the element is not just the capacity of people to make their choice. It is that they have to choose who will lead them. And that's why we have what we call periodic election, because the periodic election is an assessment time of the capacity and the performance of the government over an agreed period. So if the government is not doing well, if you are not going to use extreme and extra-legal or extra-constitutional means to change the government, you must use legal and acceptable means, which is election. So candidates are brought up and they are now allowed to canvass for votes. Then a timeline is set for them to actually go into the field and be voted for. So that is the duty INEC to carry out. But let's not debate whether they are actually independent or not, because we know to a large extent that they are tied to the apron string of the government. Now, in this situation that is playing out in particularly this artist right now, it's not going to be very, very comfortable to say certain things, but we begin to accept reality as reality is. Over time, Nigerians play to the gallery too much. Let us face these facts. We have a government that from 2015 to date, insecurity has now become the norm. If you are talking of strategic issues, you should look at what are those attacking INEC offices trying to achieve. The tactics right now is they are attacking one building or the other. If you are called up for election duty, maybe in 2023 in this, will you go?
It depends on what would have happened between now and then.
That is why we have to pray now, and we have to work hard now to put things in proper perspective.
Right.
Because as it's happening now, we are ahead of unknown government attacks everywhere. Please, in 2021, the Nigerian government should stop embarrassing Nigerian citizens with explanations like unknown government attacks. These are things that are happening in our society. These people are not aliens, they are not strangers, they are within our environment. You see, on a normal day, when you are driving on the road, the kind of check you are subjected to by policemen, if you are a law-abiding citizen, you'll be wondering how come so much crime, so much insecurity, that these people just move around. You hear the kind of sophisticated arms they are using, light weapons and offensive small arms that they are deploying to attack buildings, to attack police stations. Do these people disappear to thin air? Are they spirits? There's what we call native intelligence. People in any environment know what is always happening. They will know one or two persons. They may have seen one or two things. Why are we not getting the right updates? Because there is no confidence from the government. The government lacks, in fact, people don't trust the government. There's serious trust deficit from citizens about the government of the day. So when you hear things like this happening, it's not just the issue of INEC, it is the issue of the society that is under siege. But the government over the years have so put down people, disregard people, make people feel as if they don't count. The only time you see some politicians is during election. After election, you don't see them again. But when they're coming for election, what will they come with? Oh, a bag of rice, salt, sugar, wrapper. They give you and promise you to build bridges where there are no rivers, then to put air conditioning on roads that they have not even tarred. At the end of the day, you don't see them till the next election day. And they have also gone to the level of sophistication where, for some time now, it has always been collation centers that have now been centers of activity where all kinds of shady deeds have been reported to be happening in Nigeria of today. So when attacks are being carried out on INEC facilities, it is more psychological now because we are priming people for something that is going to happen. If there is no change, what will result will be a situation where people will not be confidently convinced that they should come out and vote. The persons that will come and carry out the duty of the election umpires, they will be afraid to also do the job. And with all sense of modesty again, how many guns are you going to deploy to INEC officers? You see, we have become a militarized society, and that is not the solution. Most of these are not military in response. It should be political and civil. So when the government is telling you unknown government, the government is also telling you that they are not even sure of who is going to attack you.
Because you have not been able to identify those behind it.
And that is where it is problematic. The problem therefore becomes very difficult to resolve. Aside from this concept of unknown soldiers, when soldiers beat up people, you say unknown soldiers beat somebody. Who is unknown? Is unknown a new directive? Is it a new logism? Is it a new kind of word? You just tell us unknown government attack the place. Unknown government. We have DSS, we have police, we have SIB, we have NS, the military part.
The DMI.
The DMI. All these things, they draw salary from the public fund system. What do? They are supposed to harvest intelligence. But Nigerian government always believe in using force. Because the average Nigerian will always say, no, I don't want to die. It's not me that will die for this country. So that mentality, you believe by you tell you station men who are heavily armed, heavily kitted, then you have secured the place. That is the worst thing that's happening. And that's why these things are still spiraling. It's snowballing.
We're going to talk a bit more about something else in a bit, but just quickly.
Let me just put
by all means.
It is very clear that the attacks on INEC offices in the southeast means that we want to make it impossible for elections
to be conducted in these areas.
That is just it. And these same persons have been saying they've been fighting for self-determination. That they want to.
But these actions have been called extreme. These actions have been said to be extreme.
They are asking, give us a referendum, let us discuss. They are not asking, see, it's end game. The end game is that if we can't get this one, we'll go to this one.
Exactly.
So where are we starting from? People are saying, we are not happy the way you are treating us. We are not second-class citizens.
A lawyer, I mean, you mentioned referendum, for example. Maybe we can take a minute to address that. A lawyer has said that the Nigerian Constitution does not have provision for referendum. So that call is dead on arrival.
No, it's not dead on arrival. This is why we use knowledge wrongly in this country. What is dead on arrival? If people are complaining about what they don't like, Can't you give them hearing? The first rule in a democratic system is freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of association. These are fundamental rights. They are not given by the Constitution. People are born with these rights. We'll keep educating people wrongly in this country. I'm saying this with all sorts of modesty because I teach a course on political thought, and I will tell you that people should be free to express themselves. You may not like what I'm saying, but let me say it.
Right.
That is my right.
Okay, I want to talk to Prof quickly.
Yeah.
The chairman of INEC says, look, this is a systematic attack. That's what he has said. I mean, referring to this series of attacks in the Southeast in particular. I want to find over time is when issues are systematic or systemic, they become very difficult to deal with, especially given the peculiarity of our own client. Yeah. For instance, it looks like this is going to be here for a while.
Oh, especially since the government keeps claiming that these are unknown gunmen. They are hiding from the truth. They are finding it difficult to use their various arms of government to decide or find out who these people are. But I think it's very, very clear. If they really want to do the right thing, I'm sure that the best persons who will have information about this country, those who are in government positions. Is it me? No. I'm sure that the government, they are the ones that are deceiving themselves. They know clearly what is going on. It is better for them to come out very boldly now, meet with the people to decide a way forward for this country. You mentioned, we talked about referendum, like he has just said. What is wrong with, this is what I want. This is what is happening to us. We are not happy with it. What is wrong with now going to meet the people? What do we mean by public hearing? Is it now absent from our process of governance? So why would we not say that you cannot come to sit down with people to find out from them what their problems are? So if they don't do it urgently, impunity will increase. And that is what we are seeing here. And it's not just 2023 like you are mentioned. Anambra
November 6th
is around the corner.
November 6th, right.
Are you sure that, for instance, anybody will go out to queue up in a polling booth or station now for any election under these given conditions? Nobody will go out. So it is time for Nigerian government to come out clearly. Of course, I'm sure, I don't know whether our president has come back from France. From France and all that.
He hasn't returned.
These are the problems that we are having. You know, we have a geriatric president, you have some sickly president and all that. How much are...
He didn't go on sick leave this time.
Okay.
He didn't go on sick leave this time.
Okay. I thought that was...
no, this was basically an official visit to the French president. I want us to discuss a different issue altogether, Prof. I want to begin with Osareme again. I mean, just to quickly look at our second discussion this morning, which essentially focuses on the calls now for the Constitution, the 1999 Constitution as amended, that is to be amended. That's our second discussion this morning, everyone. And I thought I should begin with you because we've had to have conversations with lawyers and non-lawyers about these issues over time. And people are saying that if we lack the will today as a country and as a people, of course as a government, to enforce the law as we know it, then where is the will going to come from by the time we have, as it were, evolved a new constitution or amended the existing one as it stands today? What should we be doing going forward? Is it a new constitution? Because a senator once raised a copy of the Nigerian constitution on the floor of the Senate, and he said, look, this constitution cannot give us progress. It can't give us development. It can't even move us from point A to point B. On top of all that, people are saying this constitution lacks people orientation. In other words, it's not people oriented enough. It was just a bunch of persons who came together and hurriedly developed this constitution between 1998 and 1999. But there's also the argument of saying, look, there was as it were a robust representation of every section of this country at that point in time, but it will appear events have overtaken that argument as it stands right now, because the more concern going forward is how do we apply this constitution to our lives in such a way that Nigeria becomes better for it?
Well, Nigeria today is in very dire straits. If you go to the northeast, insecurity is, let me borrow the term from the street, is being powered by Boko Haram.
It's not a seminar, a conference.
I borrowed the term. If you go to the northwest, the dominant element of insecurity is powered by
bandits.
If you go to the southwest, they will tell you that they are herdsmen. If you go to the southeast now, we have unknown gunmen. Then in the deep part of the Niger Delta, we talk of militants. We are describing just one country. Insecurity is now the norm in the country, and we are supposed to have a government. And somebody will tell you that the constitution that we have does not make provision for discussion, or that it can. You see, this is where it is wrong.
Now, the person was particular about memorandum. I mean, let's have these referendum, rather. Let's have this referendum. Yes, yeah, that the constitution has no provision for referendum.
General for the country pass. We apply to a section that will be asking for a political question to be answered.
And then you have to have a dialogue.
Yes, dialogue. Now, the constitution itself is not just a document. It is a document that specifies the arrangement of offices, the tenure of those who hold position, and the kind of powers that they can exercise.
Right.
That is what a constitution is. The constitution also tells you the structure of government. So we have a constitution. Is it working well? The answer, as I'm sitting here and studying at you now, is no. If it's not working well, what do we do? Every constitution makes provision for its review, or it has what we call lacuna, gaps that can be filled through amendments. And that's why we have a National Assembly. When we are running from pillar to post, what is pursuing us, we know. Where we are running to, we should also know.
Yeah.
We just want to play to the gallery most times. Prof has mentioned something here. Please, without even calling constitutional conference, which the last one was the one under the last presidency of the PDP-led government.
2014.
There was a confab. Men, women, youth leaders, leaders of thought, traditional rulers were put from all over the country. Did the country collapse? No. But it gave us a sense of belonging, that people were asked to come and talk. Now you can use another method. You don't necessarily have to turn everybody into a member of the National Assembly. Because what we're having in Nigeria today is representative democracy, where you elect people to go and speak for you, to go and work for you. You can do the same. Start with town hall meetings. We have gone this far. We have not been able to make progress. What should we do? Even in families, fathers call their children and say, okay, children, mother, call your mother, let us talk. The Bible said, come, let us reason together. Why is Nigerian government and those people in high public office always shying away from this issue of dialogue, discourse? That means there's something they are hiding. And there is this mythology that we learned from the Greeks. Pandora's box. When the box opened, things came out that never entered the box again. Nigeria has opened Pandora's box. You see, when you start playing with insecurity, it's like wildfire. If it consumes even the person that started the fire will be consumed. So those that thought they will gain by sponsoring one strife or the other in the country, they are amazed now at the raging fire that it has become. So even the issue of constitutional amendment, referendum, they are not outside the scope. They are issues that should be addressed holistically. Whether we sit down to write a fresh constitution or not, of course, we will still have to look at the mindset of the average Nigerian, which is critical. But the document we have, does it address the issues of the day? If it doesn't, we should look at either we start amending it, because that's why you call for public hearing. You can say, okay, let us go around the country. You don't need to gather everybody in Abuja. You can't do it. If it will make everybody at least calm, because in negotiation, when people are given room to express their position, even though they will not get what they want, but the fact that they were allowed to ventilate their frustrations and other bottled up emotions is something in itself in conflict management. So when you are now saying this is not negotiable, this one is a no-go area, this one should not be discussed, you are only pushing forward what we call the evil day. It will still come upon you. The best thing is when you see a problem, you ask yourself, what is the best solution to this problem? Because when you are solving a problem, this is why I love my union, ASU. ASU always say that we don't just tell you a problem, we will give you a solution to the problem. You don't address a problem and leave it halfway. You must address it holistically.
Go the full.
So which is why when you say Nigerian Constitution, say we the people, which people decided Nigerian Constitution? It was the military government that sat down and appointed people to write a constitution. Now we're in civilian democracy. Let everybody sit down and say, okay, what do you know about this? What do you not like about this one? Because Nigeria is a country of many nationalities. And we have basic differences. We also have elements that keep us together. We also should look at strength in that diversity. And in doing all these things, we must allow ourselves the freedom to express what is our best desire. And it is when we have this ability to harness our aspirations that we can forge ahead as a country. As a nation state, we are not moving forward right now.
Okay, let's talk about, I mean, you mentioned nation now. Prof,
Yes.
There are people who say one of the things any constitution must be able to accomplish, whether the 1999 constitution is amended or anyone we intend to ultimately introduce as it were, is national cohesion, for instance. And there are those who are saying, unfortunately, Nigeria has not healed from the wounds we sustained from the Civil War in the late 60s. Is there any truth in that?
But it is clear, even from the Constitution. Let me tell you, the Nigerian Constitution does not succinctly describe the entity Nigeria. If you open the Constitution, you will find that Nigerian Constitution does not describe it as a...
That's a shortcoming, isn't it?
It does not describe it as a secular state and all that. The mind of those who built the National Assembly reflects in our Constitution. The National Assembly is built after a religious organization, a particular religious organization in this country. If you look at it, just look at the structure that you have there, the National Assembly, where they meet. Tell me what it represents, the kind of, whether it does not represent the kind of a building pattern of a religious sect in this country. That is what you find reflect. Somebody had, a Christian group preached and then mentioned that if you open Nigerian Constitution, it tells you that Nigeria is a kind of religious group. You understand? Does not take care of all the other, religious groups that you have in the country.
Now, by your assertion, is that the more reason it is timely to do an amendment?
I was building up
yes,
that you see, to what extent can you patch a dress? You patch and patch, you notice any point at where you are joining is weaker than the rest.
Obviously.
I hope you know that. And so at the end of the day, you find that we have a weak paper, do I put it, or constitution before us. So what I think that we should do now is set aside what we have now and then call components. The National Assembly, they are there, start public hearing and all that to be able to put up another constitution. Look at it, let me tell you, the system of governance, is it clear of what system we are running now? Are we running a federal system, or are we running a monarchical system of government, or what? He is in government in that area. You'll be able to tell us which system are we running in this country now? Is it really through federalism?
Somebody said it's a federal system where the subnationals are probably disadvantaged. I don't know how true that is.
Subnational, but let me ask you something. You have a country where you have two different legal systems is used. Is that proper? Is that proper? And you say we are together as a country? No, it is not right. Because we are supposed to sit down together and say, okay, this is the legal system that we are going to adopt in this country, and everybody will follow. You can, at a point, these people push, a certain part of the country already adopts Sharia system, legal system. At a point, they were pushing, I say, okay, any time you arrest any of our member somewhere else in other parts of the country, you have to apply the Sharia law for such a person. Gradually, they are encroaching, they are coming, and all that. Is it right? You have to now come also, okay, if you find out now, you have the governor in the state, you now have, the traditional rulers also there, making also, policy statements, deciding. At a point I said, how come that apart from the president of the country, somebody decides when Nigeria goes on holiday? Is somebody who sights the moon and say immediately this session the country is on holiday? Is that right? So many things have to be discussed and then have to be put down in our constitution.
Why do we not seem to have the will to have this discussion that you are suggesting?
It's because we are afraid to face the facts. And that is what is now taunting us on the face. Because for a very long time we have refused to face facts, it's not taunting us on the face. until you decide to come to the table and say, if we are going to die, let's die here today. We must take these decisions and all that. The country will continue to wobble and fumble. That is what we are saying here. So the issue is, like we have said, is that is why you find out the insincerity and all of that is what is playing out very, very clearly. We must come together and say, this is the way we want to go. This is the system. If you want to say, okay, are we going extreme left or we are going extreme right? You know, you
do
find
we have the ideological basis to pursue all of these values that you're
we have
projecting?
People in this country.
Yes.
Yeah, we have people
because what
in
we do
this
in this country as of today is, I mean, at breakfast time, I'm in party A. By the time it's time for lunch, I'm doing party B.
We cannot be that.
So how do you drive this right wing, left wing, center?
Yes. You continue
elements?
like that, you are amorphous.
But
you are never a country.
Isn't that the system that we run? Isn't that the reason we are where we are, for example? But we're going to talk about all this as we make progress into this conversation. But Sarema, let me talk to you about how that, as it stands today, for instance, people are still questioning the kind, or if you like, the brand of government that we run in Nigeria. People have had to argue whether Nigeria is a capitalist system or not. I understand, I mean, within this sphere of economics, for example. But this is pure politics that we're talking about, for instance. And people are still in doubt as to what exactly is the precise form of government that we run. We have seen governors in recent times come out to say, look, we are supposed to be a federal republic. But the federating states, or what some people call subnationals, have little or no voice at all as to the direction of the country. These are fundamental concerns, aren't they?
Yes, there are issues that we cannot run away from anyway. It started from 1966 when there was the first military coup. You know, at independence, Nigeria was a parliamentary system of government with 3 major regions, the north, the east, and the western regions. Then Lagos was the federal capital. And if you realize then, the regions were very powerful. The regions could even go into foreign relations on their own. The regions had that capacity to dictate what from their own proceeds will go to the center, because they were using the principle of derivation.
Right.
Where it is what you produce that determines what you get for yourself. So you push something to the federal center. That's actually federalism. That's the method they're using in the United States of America. Issues like currency, defense, foreign relations is the exclusive preserve of the center. But local issues such as education, religion, health, you leave it for those who are directly at the point of contact. That's the way Nigeria continued. Up to 63, Nigeria became a republic. Then we had Western region, so we now had 4. But we still continued with that parliamentary system up to 66 January 15, when the coup happened. Now the coup happened, a lot of things changed, because the military system is unitary, it's command system. You issue a command, the other person responds. That's not democratic. In democracy, you dialogue. That's the beauty of democracy, is the ability that every person who has reached the capacity to reason is allowed to express. You cannot canalize opinion. I expect progress. It will not work. It happened in USSR with all the might that USSR had. USSR had to come back to the point that they will have to disintegrate and restructure. And today, different countries came out from USSR. They are all doing well at their own expense. Now, the question with Nigeria is, what system are we having? We are, on paper, a federal system.
Right.
In reality, it's a unitary system. That is why you find governors have to go to Abuja to go and get allocation. From what? From the resources that are in the different regions. Please, this federal government, where is their own resource? Where is the federal government's own resource? It is state governors. Land Use Act of 1978 gave power to who? State governors. So if you say every land, everything on the land, underneath the land, above the land, is under the control of the governor. It also means that the resources, that was the argument that Governor James Ibori of Delta State started then with federal government. They went to Supreme Court over that matter. And it became a political issue. Of course, it will always be political. But there are ways you can adjust. That is why over time you now say, okay, revenue sharing formula. Those who are producing oil, you now take 13% from whatever is going to the...
Realized from crude.
Yes. Then you will now give the others. That is wrong. If we have crude oil should service the interest primarily of the community, because there are some hazards that community will suffer. If you have coal should also service your interest, and you also get some benefit. If you have cocoa, if you have tin, if you have plantain. If you have gold that has been found in Zamfara, the crisis in Zamfara is around gold that has been mined illegally over the years and hidden by people in that area from the majority of the populace of Nigeria. So now we are seeing that there is gold in Zamfara. So if there is gold in Zamfara, why is that gold not being brought into the national pool? Meanwhile, recently we heard that Central Bank of Nigeria paid 5 billion naira
to buy gold
from Zamfara under the argument that they don't want them to sell it to people who now used to buy arms as bandits. But we didn't use that argument for Niger Delta. So if you...
But wasn't that a matter of expediency, I mean, between the CBN and Zamfara State government?
That's not expediency. That was just politically consulted argument that did not make sense to anybody. If we use that same method, that the way Nigerian government militarized Niger Delta, they should also militarize Zamfara.
But it seems the oil sector, as it were, I mean, the sharing formula is a bit more organized and structured, but I mean, better structured than that of gold, for example. In fact, until the Zamfara case happened very recently, many persons never knew Nigeria, in practical terms, had gold, for instance.
We were deceiving ourselves.
A lot of us knew.
Yes, we were deceiving ourselves.
In fact, way back 1992, we've already heard that. Do you know that there is this particular called Tantalite? I'm sure Prof will mention to you.
I was taught tin mine in Jos when I was as a primary school student or child.
Somebody will
tin mine.
Put wool over your face and tell you don't worry, because it's easy to just take crude oil, export it, get the proceeds, and Nigeria became a monoculture economy, which is wrong. Even the oil that is being taken from the certain part of Nigeria, just like the Niger Delta. Let me tell you one thing that the government has done to people that is scary and even embarrassing. There's supposed to be something called wellhead metering. At the point where you extract the oil from a well, you must put a meter to know how much crude oil came out from inside the ground. That's not what they do in Nigeria. They do the metering at the point of export. So between the well and the export point, what happens? Oil can disappear because you can siphon it with pipes. This is Nigeria of today. Please, we are Nigerians, and Nigerian government has so made a mess of this country over the years. It's not just PDP or APC, it has been the system. And this is why the government today lacks credibility. In fact, there was this joke I saw that the 4 most dangerous criminal organizations in this world, the Russian mafia, so the Russian gang, then the Italian mafia, the Japanese Yakuza, they did not mention Nigerian government. We are talking of a government that is hoodwinking its own people. Government is the primary duty of government is the security of lives and property and to plan for development. So if we start from there and if that's our objective, whatever we have to do together to achieve the objective is not wrong. It is to work in the best interest of this country. So asking me now what kind of government we have in Nigeria, on paper we have a federal system. In reality we don't. We have a unitary system that is being managed as if it's a federal system. That's why you have governors. But the governors have to go and collect money from someone.
In other words, that needs to be addressed, obviously.
It has to be, and the way to address it is not just, you see, the constitution, we can talk of changing constitution. People can abuse it. But the constitution even puts safeguard. People also abuse the safeguard. It must be that the people should now know what is wrong, and they have seen it in reality today. People should not be allowed to now say, okay, what do you have to say about this matter? What can be done differently? Let them. In
other words, let's bring us to the same page.
Let us.
And then let everybody take responsibility for the choices that they make. Prof, let's talk about something for a minute. I mean, now that we're looking at whether or not to amend the Constitution, let's not forget quickly that last week, 17 governors of the southern states met in Asaba, Delta State capital, and one of the resolutions was let's ban open grazing. That has, of course, come with so much of controversies already, both on and off social media. The second is the governor saying, look, this country needs to be restructured. That's one way we can answer many of the questions that citizens are asking across this country, even though some persons have also said that an elected officer, like his governor of a state, for example, has no basis, has no justification to ask or to demand restructuring. But overall, I mean, beyond all of the noise that we hear, will restructuring become the magic wand, ultimately, to solve most of these problems?
If we fared better before the 1966,
which he mentioned,
if we fared better, why not try a working system? Because the current one, obviously, is babash. It's not working. It's taking us to we are already in gloom either. So why should we continue with this system?
I'll tell you why I asked that question.
Yes,
I've pointed out to they pointed to some hypocrisy.
Yes,
they're saying the same governors asking for restructuring, as we know it right
now.
They are the same resisting local governments from getting autonomy. And some people are saying, well, that's a different kettle of fish altogether. Let's deal with this one first.
You see the meaning of
it. You see, can you build something on nothing?
Yeah, well, let me tell you. Let me tell you. You see, what we mean by restructuring is, to put a structure in place, that directs the human mind, because the human mind is desperately wicked. So, but if you put a system on ground, and then the system now directs, this is what you must do. If everybody will honestly come to the table to now, with that restructuring, it means that we need to do another constitution. You understand? If we must all exist together. So, when that is done, and the constitution is there, defining the boundaries and activities of everybody operating within the components, then you will find that things will work well. Before the 1966, this country fared better. So why not go back to that? The restructuring, for instance, will bring you back to a near nationality. Let me put it that way.
Something better than what we have now.
Homogeneity. Because you need that homogeneity. You cannot bandit people who are of different, very diverse, different types of thinking and all that, and bring them together and expect them to work together. No, you will get repulsion. So what we're saying here is that, restructuring maybe narrows down, brings us closer home, closer to your resources, closer to ideas, the system and all that, and you work with that. Look at the sports festival that just took place recently. You find it has always reflected what has been there, where the Israelis of those days, the people the athletes, you find them around the Edo Delta. I don't know whether I'm making sense here. In those days, if you want to, that is where you get most athletes and all that. And so these are, if these people now know, that this is what God has given to us. These are best what we can trade with. Then the people will design, governance around that and develop cities. You can imagine what Ogbemudia did in those days now. In those days when you used to hear of AAA, these are places where athletes, sprang up now and all that. So, but the system now that all of us are now looking at Abuja, we have now, we undermining whatever all that can, build this country to greatness. And then looking at...
So ultimately the point is each region should go back and
because we'll be closer
its competitive advantage.
Exactly. And be closer as a nation. Nations are different from countries.
I'm going to push you on one more issue before I come back to Sereme, which is the fact that, I'm just curious off the top of my head.
Yes.
If we didn't have crude in this country, would we be having the same exact conversation as we're doing today? Number one. Number two is, would the system be this tensed up as we have it right now?
Of course, you know what crude means.
Crude.
Okay, if we didn't have...
Yes,
okay.
Because a lot of persons are saying, look, in the final analysis, all of these hula balu, all of these conversations we're having back and forth, it's not so much about the elections and the elected as it is about crude. In fact, crude is the driving force for people's ambition to want to hold public or elected or elective offices, and so on and so forth. So I'm saying, if we removed crude oil from the equation, all right, as a factor, for example, would the equation still be the same?
They say it is where the carcass is, that's where you find the ego. What I'm saying here is where the money is, that is where Nigerians are aggregating towards.
And the money as it stands today in Nigeria is oil.
Is oil. What generates money now is oil. And that's where, look at before oil, it was, you have the pyramids, the groundnut pyramids, you have the cocoa, and then you have palm oil and all that. That's what we had in those days. And the policy of derivation then was based on what you generate in your area. Or, revenue sharing was based on what you are able to derive from your...
So the different components would give to the center.
50% is what they give. Give 30 to federal government. Somebody analyzed it recently and all that. That is what it was in those days. But the tricksters, those who think that, governance is their birthright and all that, immediately the crude was discovered now in the south or this way, then I quickly, I said, no, this will not continue with this principle anymore. What we must now use is population. And then now use population. And if you look at it, there's nowhere in the world where where people inhabit more is the desert region. So what are we talking about? It means clearly, if what we have been seeing on the social media is correct, it means that the Nigerian census was terribly skewed. You understand? If that is anything to go back, because that is why they are laughing at us all over the world. How come that people now inhabit the desert region more than the rainforest zone? How? And all that. So these are issues that you cannot explain. And so they now started using population, and they're now using land mass, to the extent that people are saying that, okay, that the oil that you even have is because of our land mass. Somebody have presented that kind of position and all that. Very annoying position. So if we didn't have crude oil, no, we wouldn't. I'm sure that these problems wouldn't have been with you. Long time. I'm sure that some other persons from other parts of this country would have even been the one asking now that we should go our ways and all that.
A wonderful point you made, Prof. Serime, again, just this week, for instance, I mean, now that we're talking about constitutional amendments, the House of Reps had to suspend plenary just to prioritize debates on the constitution amendment discussion as a matter of deliberation. As a matter of fact, we understand now that there is a timeline already as to how the public hearings have been scheduled to hold across the country, town hall meetings, engagements at several points. Of course, one of the touch points is what areas of the Constitution need amendment as it stands today. It seems we are more committed now to the process of amending the Constitution than we were some years ago, don't you think?
Yeah, the reality we are facing today necessitates such development.
Okay.
It would be foolhardy to pretend that things are okay in this country. Things are not okay. And when Prof was saying that we can write a new constitution, I suggested something. I said there's an amendment process that can easily make the job possible. Go from the bottom to the top. People live in communities in different areas. On election day, election materials get to the most remote areas of this country.
Even riverine areas.
Everything gets there. But because we know human beings live. This is why I said our government is wallowing in self-delusion. Unfortunately, the citizenry are taking the brunt of the pain. If not, you don't need to go to government to know that there's a governor. Everybody cannot be governor, everybody cannot be president, everybody cannot be local government.
Obviously.
At the same time. It must be one person at a time. But that person is an aggregation of the collective acceptance, the consent of the majority. Even though there will be a minority that may not vote for him. But when he's elected, the person has to pretend over every other person. Now, in doing that, you can go from committee to committee. You can set a time frame. It doesn't have to be 1 week or 1 month. It is always, you see, we are always setting unrealistic targets and timelines. You can say between now and July, okay, it's even too close. For the next 3 months, let the whole country begin to ask itself questions and propose answers to those questions. And we'll begin to collate them. Nobody should be told you cannot go to this area, you cannot discuss this area, this is not negotiable. Don't say so. Leave them to explain. So
it should be discussed with open-mindedness.
Open mind. When you begin to put hooks and frame from reference and stop gaps, that creates a problem. That means there's an intention. There's something else you want to achieve. That is what always leads to this issue of distrust for the government. The government should allow people, because the people are the ones to be governed. If they are allowed to speak their mind on issues that affect their own welfare on a daily basis, and they are given that free hand to articulate proper responses, the problem will be solved. Because at the end of the day, who are you addressing the matter on their behalf? It's the same people. So when people are not allowed to express their opinion, you drive them underground. Then they become a third force. That's why you are now having all this issue of bandits,
agitation everywhere.
Agitation. And you now begin to hear of unknown gunmen. No, people want to be happy. They want to live. They want to live well. That's the desire. Peace is indivisible. Insecurity is also what affects everybody, whether you are rich or poor. It doesn't know color or class or race or gender. That's why at times I keep people that we should pray that these things should be properly managed. If there's an explosion, it doesn't mean who is Christian or Muslim, who is male of female, who is young or old. It will obliterate everything in its path. So we should be very careful. The fortunate thing we have had in Nigeria is that we have the critical element. One, we have the land size, we have vast and vibrant population. We also have abundance of resources naturally given to us. We didn't create any of these resources. Manage it well. That's our problem now. And how do we manage this well? We agree on the process. When the agreement has been reached, we effectively execute. It's not just because we have a constitution right now. If it was followed properly, we would have reached somewhere. Even the current constitution as it is, it's not being followed. It is more observed in breach than in practice. The only time you hear government accepting certain is when it doesn't contend with their position. That's why most of you find that whether at the national level or at the state level, there's open disregard for court judgments. As if the judiciary is not an arm of the government. I mean, the constitution says there are three arms: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. But the executive carries on as if it is the only government. They just decide, they'll tell you that we have made a decision, if you don't like it, you can go to court. As if it's an afterthought. Then, when the court decision is given, the executive say, we are studying the decision, the judgment. They are not studying it. But when the judgment is in the favor of any executive person, instantly there is execution. So you find it very funny. That is why the country is running from one failure to the other. We cannot continue like this. As we always say, if you have been doing something in a particular way and you are not getting the desired result, what do? You retrace your steps.
Thank you so much.
Change your pattern.
On a final note now, Prof.
Yes.
Whether you like it or not, at the heart of this contention, as it regards, as it has to do with the Constitution, for example, is the issue of resource control. We can be hypocritical about it, but it's at the heart of it. But people are saying, look, if we can find the courage to deal with that in the process of this proposed amendment, a lot of the issues we're dealing with today as a country would have been resolved. Do you share that sentiment?
Otherwise, it's a deceit. You must return back to what it used to be. Otherwise, everybody will feel that, okay, you are deceiving them and all that. So, resource control takes centers space in the process that is going on. But then I want to use this opportunity also to tell those who are shutting down plenaries that the people are not aware that the process of constitutional review is on. So it means that already you have shortchanged the people.
But it's not too late to up our
that is why we are saying
awareness.
it. That's why we are saying it on air now. Let them know. Get all the town unions, get all the NEJs, ONOJs, and the OBAs involved. Get all the state house of assembly,
civil society.
Yes, get all the labor organizations informed and all that. Let them make their inputs and all that. Get all churches and all, and then the mosque involved, so that at the end of the day, in fact, what they call it, all religious organizations, let them be involved. Otherwise, at the end of the day, it will look as if...
In other words, the process should be seen to be thorough and Nigerian itself.
That is not, and then everybody must be given a listening ear.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming. Felix Osareme, we appreciate you for coming, as always. Thank you, Prof. Julius Yesele, for also coming to join us this morning. We're taking a break because this is where we end this discussion. We're back quickly to talk a bit more about something...